Hey everyone, it's Ryan from No Credentials Required to talk to you about one of our newest partners at Belly Up Sports, SeatGeek. Yeah, live sports is great on television, but the feeling of being at the arena is a priceless experience. That's why our friends at SeatGeek are there to help you find the best tickets at the best prices. Not only can you get tickets to sporting events, but you can also get tickets to concerts, comedy shows, musicals, and more. Search for your desired event now at SeatGeek.com, enter promo code BellyUpSports at checkout, and you save $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek. Life's an event. We have the tickets.
Well, the most talked about rule change from the MLS this year is that they are allowing trades that are cash for player trades. That might sound weird because this is a thing that's already been going on with the rest of the world, which is a transfer. This is cash for player trades are transfers. That is exactly what it is. It's not reinvented in any way. It is straight up just a transfer. MLS has not done this. They have not done transfers. They usually trade players for general allocation money, international slots. I don't know about draft, maybe draft picks, but to each his own how you view the draft pick. But this just goes back to one of those things that like American sports are not familiar with the idea of a transfer, like baseball. In other sports, whenever you do a quote unquote transfer for a player, it's usually because they are a free agent and can sign whatever club they want to. Whereas in the world of football, you can just straight up just pay a transfer fee to gain a player from another team. There's not any swapping of players, which has happened before. There has been stories of player swaps before in the world of football, but it's not as common because the most common thing is doing transfers. Putting in a transfer fee, getting the player, and that's it. It's not common in MLS, and I think many of the reasons why is because, the salary cap is one big thing. If you spend money, that's going to affect the salary cap in some sense because, your budget is your budget. But, and I think maybe one day if MLS ever decides to move away from the salary cap, that could probably be a benefit, especially when you do these transfers for teams that do have the money to let them spend their money. And I think it's kind of what this cash for player trade is supposed to do. Is one, it isn't a limited amount, so there's no X number of dollars that you need to not pass in order to get that player. So that's a good thing. The only thing that I do think is kind of weird is you only had a maximum of 2 cash for player trades per year. So you're only allowed to make 2 transfers per year for your club. And obviously, and I think if you're going to do a cash for player thing, it's probably trade. I don't know why I said thing. It's probably going to be for a player that you think is going to be impactful. So essentially a DP, if you will. So that's going to be kind of what an extra element. How do you choose those 2 players for that year that you're going to go out and give get a transfer fee for? But yeah, so you do have 2 players and you cannot use any other asset for that transaction. So you cannot add a player or add draft picks or international slots to get that player. It's going to be a straight transfer deal. It's nothing else can be added to it. It's interesting because this is a thing that happens across the world. It's just the MLS is finally doing it. And look, I get it. The MLS is weird. MLS just doesn't do things their own way. I 100% get it. I'm not shocked by it. I get it. MLS is weird. I'm with you with the MLS is weird thing. I've criticized MLS. I also like MLS and I support MLS and I want to see MLS grow and I want to see MLS to get better. And little by little, they're going to start making changes like this because one, you got Messi in here. Messi, I believe might be in his last year of his contract. Might be working on an extension. I could be wrong on that one. Don't quote on me. So if you want to keep him around, maybe he wants to go to Newell's Old Boys and end it over there. Maybe you guys don't want to do that, and maybe you can entice him in some way. Well, things need to start being opened up, especially with a lot of the roster restrictions that are going on that the MLS have in place. Which, let's be honest, with Inter Miami, they've had a rough time trying to deal with registering players to fit the salary cap. I've said it plenty of times, like it is going to be at one point where MLS is going to look at that salary cap and either, push the salary cap more, further back so that way it opens up more opportunities, or they just remove the salary cap. I would honestly say one of the few things that I would say that MLS might think about copying from baseball is the competitive threshold that each team has. So each team, so if you guys aren't familiar with baseball, each MLB team has their own budget depending on what their finances are. For instance, the team like the Yankees, they have they can spend as much as they want because their competitive threshold is higher than most other teams. Now, if you pass that threshold, it's not like, oh, you have to figure out to stay under. You just have to pay a luxury tax. So, and if you're a team that, for instance, Miami's case, maybe they want to go all out one year. Maybe they're willing to pay that luxury tax if that means that the player, especially if that player is going to guarantee them a championship. So, and I think that could be something that if MLS was to copy another American league, I obviously I would prefer them to not have any sort of cap in general and kind of follow what everybody else in the world is doing. But at the same time, it's just not going to happen. Because I think for MLS, what at least their thought process, because they have these rules in place when it comes to rosters, it helps with parity. I think that's the big thing. I think that they're hoping that they can still have a league where you really think anybody can win it. And I'd argue that the roster restrictions isn't the thing that keeps it from having a parity. I think to me where the parity comes into play, and I actually said this on Goals TV in Wake Up MLS, it's the playoff format. The playoff format is what causes the parity. Because I mean, if somebody really wanted to, crap, I might end up doing it. Someone could probably go through the last 5 years of MLS. Let's just do 5 years, man. Get some sort of sample size and look through the roster, look through the season completely, and see who is technically the best team. Which obviously is an easy thing to find out because obviously the Supporters Shield will tell you who was the best team in MLS that year. So, for instance, last year, Inter Miami was a Supporters Shield winner. They were the best team, and as the rest of the world does it, it's just a table. Whoever finishes in first place are the champions of the league. It's a very simple thing. It's not complicated. It's not hard. But, what happens is that obviously the top teams are the top teams. Now, you do have your instances where one of those teams that are usually a mid-table team, maybe not necessarily always up there in discussion, has a run of a lifetime and wins the title. We've seen it last year with Bayer Leverkusen. But, at the end of the day, the top teams are the top teams, and the bottom feeders are the bottom feeders. And I think MLS with some of the roster restrictions, you'll see teams be able to turn their season around. I mean, for instance, right now, what San Jose is doing with Bruce Arena and some of the additions some of the new players that they have brought in, many are wondering maybe are they going to have a turnaround this year? And we've seen it plenty of times in MLS. FC Cincinnati was really a bad team at one point. They turned things around, and now they're one of the most competitive teams in the MLS. So I think that, yes, the roster rules maybe keeps you in play, but in reality, the playoff format is what really causes the parity. Does roster regulations help in some sense? A little bit, but I think that at the end of the day, the playoff format is what causes the parity in the sport. Now, it's intriguing what they're doing now that they're adding transfers. It's not new, but it is new to the MLS. And so I think it's interesting that they're only allowing you to do 2 players. And once again, I think it's just to keep fairness in some aspect. Now, one of the things to be mindful when it comes to these cash for player trades is if you do a cash for player trade, whatever they're, especially within the MLS, whatever their status is in the MLS, it stays. So, for instance, let's say, let's say the Houston Dynamo decides to put in a cash for player trade for Ricky Puig. Let's just say they do that. So the Dynamo maybe are hoping that, hey, maybe I can get him on a cheaper deal. Yeah, I know sounds crazy right now because I'm using Ricky Puig because Ricky Puig is solid. I mean, yes, he's injured right now, but still, he's still a quality player. But let's say that the Dynamo are hoping maybe we can give him a lower salary so it doesn't affect the salary cap, and now he's not a designated player. That's not going to happen. Like, if he's a designated player for the LA Galaxy, he will have to be a designated player for the Houston Dynamo. And for those of you that aren't familiar with what designated player is, a designated player, you can have up to 3 players on your roster that are listed as designated players. Their salary will not impact the salary cap. So these are obviously are going to be your high-end players, the guys that, like, you're giving them a lot of money because they're going to be top performers. It's not always the case, but ideally that's what you're saying when you're giving them the title designated player, that you're willing to spend beaucoup money to bring them in and hope that they're going to perform, and also helps that it doesn't impact the team's salary. So I think the salary cap. So, just so you guys know, but also what happens though, at least for players' sake, the players are entitled to 10% of the transfer fee. So a little something for them. Obviously, the MLSPA had to approve this. The MLS Players Association had to approve this to happen. Like, MLS couldn't just make this change, without the MLSPA being behind it. So there it is.